My DGens, welcome to Harumasa, our free 5-star, our free S rank, our doctor ratio. Today, let's talk about our boy, and these are all of the topics that I'll be covering. Again, it is a lot, so let's just jump right into it. But before we go deeper inside of him, let's start off with like the burning question. Is he actually worth building? Is he actually any good? And to that I say, yeah, he is. And so if you are a new Zenless gamer, absolutely, he is as strong, equally built, as strong as Ellen, as Juyuan, as the rest of the S rank attackers. He certainly lives up to the name. And then if you have been playing for a while, but you don't have Yanagi, still absolutely worth building, especially because elemental typing is pretty impactful. And if you only have one DPS, Harumasa absolutely can be your second DPS for your Shiyu defense. He will pull his weight. But where it does get dicey is if you are a day one player like me and you do have Yanagi, you can absolutely still play Harumasa, especially because a lot of people are going to use their Yanagi for their Miyabis to kind of enable her with the frost stacks and all of that. But if you are using your Yanagi on like a team 2, like Miyabi team 1, Yanagi team 2, that's probably the best case to not build Harumasa. And so in summary, he's just a good, solid, limited S rank character. He's no Miyabi. I don't think that's a fair comparison though, because nobody's Miyabi, but he is solid. He will perform like a limited S rank attacker. Alright, in that case, let's start talking through the core Harumasa experience. And so the majority of Harumasa's damage is actually in his melee dagger attack, and this is what that looks like. It's like slash and then 2, 3. So let me just do that again. There's going to be 3 slashes. 1, 2, 3. That is about 1000% damage. It is the strongest thing in Harumasa's kit. That being said though, if we actually head over to his skills and go all the way to the bottom to his core ability, core passive, you will see the crit rate of dash attack Hiten no Tsuru slash, which is that slash thing, the slash 1, 2, 3. The crit rate of his slashes increases by, it's supposed to be 25% at max. And then those slashes also gain 12% at max crit damage, and it stacks up multiple times. 3 times per use, up to 6 times. That is a lot of crit rate and crit damage, but it only applies to the slash. And so you can see why it's in our best interest to essentially proc the slash as much as possible. So what I am saying is that his bow form is kind of like, it's kind of mid, right? It's just an enabler for us to get into the slashes. And so in that case, how exactly do we do that? We need to talk about the next core mechanic, which is Harumasa's like Orb and Mark system. And so when I do that 5-hit combo, you'll see we have a bunch of orbs on the field. So these two guys over here. The summary of it is that I do things, whether it's like basic attack 5, so that's 3, 4, 5, and I can summon orbs like that. And then after summoning these orbs, what we can do is convert them into a mark. So boom, and you can see Homeboy has a cross on him. And when an enemy has a mark, what you can do is dash attack and you start doing the slashes. 1, 2, 3. So let's walk through that in a little bit more detail. There are 4 ways to generate balls onto the field. You can basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can see there are 2 balls there. And the most important part about this basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is that you really need to learn how to identify the 5th hit, because there are actually some combos which will skip straight to like 4, 5 or 3, 4, 5 or just 5. So what the 5 looks like, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's this kind of like twirl around into a shot. And so yeah, keep that animation of that 5th shot in mind, because we're about to come back to it very soon. And then we've got the EX skill over here, and that is going to generate 6 balls. And then using chain attack, so I'm going to chain attack with Harumasa, and you're going to see another 6 balls appear. And I'm going to cancel that, and you can see them. They are all over this enemy. And the last way is to trigger attribute anomaly. So you can see Homeboy is about to get shocked. I'm going to put him in shock, and boom, that is 6 orbs right there. All right, and so we've got these orbs on the field. The most important thing, I think, in terms of Harumasa's kit is that, again, you can't overstack. If you freaking overstack, it will be a massive, massive DPS loss, right? Because these 6 orbs represents 3 slashes, which represents 1000 damage in like record time. It's so freaking fast. And so for example, if these 6 orbs are on the field and then I use my EX skill, it's going to overwrite those 6 orbs with a new set of 6 orbs. And what that means is that I just lost 1000 damage right there, or 1000% MV. And so the best thing that you can do is that if you see 6 orbs, you just do the whole charge attack, you hit him, and then we do the slash. 1, 2, 3. That's it. And so if you just follow that principle, you see 6 orbs, you go into Harumasa and you use it up as the slashes. 1, 2, 3 again. However, the mechanic that risks overstacking the most is actually the attribute anomaly one. So if you remember, if our Grace or anyone procs attribute anomaly, those 6 orbs will come up. And so to be honest, most people don't keep track of the attribute anomaly, especially if you're playing an attacker character. And so this is pretty much the exact situation that I'm trying to warn you against. Homeboy is about to get shocked because his bar is almost filled. I also have an EX skill, so I'm tempted, because there are no orbs on the field, I'm actually tempted to use my EX skill. I'm going to do exactly that, but I just shocked and EX skilled. There should theoretically have been 6 balls plus 6 balls. However, there are only 6 balls, if that makes sense, right? So what I should have done is I should have actually changed into Grace, proc the attribute anomaly, like with whatever she has, and then switch back to Harumasa, turn those orbs into stacks, ///, and then use E, get 6 morph spheres, and then ///. That is the right move. And so you can see why it's so punishing if you're not keeping track of the attribute anomaly and you accidentally overstack. You just straight up lose 1000 damage. All right, and so the next mechanic I want to talk about is this charge attack. And most people are probably going to know about it. However, what a lot of people don't know about is that there is actually a second way to convert these balls into the marks. So again, these balls convert it into the mark by hold charge, hold basic attack, and then letting it hit, and you get the mark, right? And then what you can do is dash attack, ///. However, there is actually another way to convert those balls into marks straight away, and it is to hold E or hold your skill after using either basic 5, chain attack, or your skill. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hold down my skill, and you're going to see the balls come up and then also convert into the mark. I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to have one hand up here, hold, boom, boom. And you can see he has a mark. And so let me just clear that mark real quick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to basic 5 and then hold my skill. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and I'm holding the skill. And you can see there was a second shot at the end, right? There was a 5 hit and then another twirl hit. So that second twirl is the hold skill. And then so with the conversion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm holding E, and boom, I freaking swiveled again and shot him again, and then I applied the mark. So what I'm trying to say is that this is just an alternative method that you can use to actually go straight into the mark without having to do this like hold attack thing. Second one is to literally just hold your EX skill when you have energy. So I'm just holding it down, boom, and then boom again. So you can see it's that swivel, shoot, which actually converts it into the mark. All right, and so the next important part of his kit is his additional abilities. So I'm just going to come into his skill info all the way to the bottom, and you can see additional ability overclock. Essentially, when the enemy is either stunned or under attribute anomaly, so that's either shock or burn or whatever, he does 40% more damage. Very straightforward. But what it actually does is it allows for Harumasa to kind of be piloted with 2 different playstyles. And the first one is quite obvious because we have somebody like this already. When the enemy is stunned, we kind of unload everything very much like the Juyuan. What's really important about this one is that you need to make sure to give Harumasa as much stun time as possible, right? And so that means massive synergies with Lighter, who actually increases stun duration. But on top of that, you need to also be canceling the chain attacks of the characters you don't care about. It could be Kaleda, it could be Grace, it could be Benice, whoever, right? We want to spend as much time in Harumasa as possible whilst the enemy is stunned. And so for example, we stun the guy, and then immediately coming out of chain attack, we cancel everyone else. We see the orbs pop up, then we convert the orbs with the hold, and then ///. Now, here is where it gets really freaking interesting, because there is another piece of tech that I would refer to as like infinite slash loop. But the idea is that if you don't have energy, if you've already used all of your energy, you don't have ultimate and all of that, what exactly are you going to be doing for the rest of that stun time or just like any downtime? And the answer is not auto attack or basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's actually this infinite slash loop, and it's relatively easy to pull off. You just need to practice it a little bit. And so the idea is that after the slashes, you skip into the basic 4, basic 5. Remember, you needed to remember what the animation of basic 5 looks like. And then those orbs are going to appear, and then we're going to charge attack, or we can hold E, whichever one you want to do, hold skill. And then it's going to convert the marks, and then we slash again, basic 4, basic 5. Convert, slash again, basic 4, basic 5. And then it is this infinite loop, which gets us as many slashes as we can. So again, when you don't have anything else, don't basic attack, do this infinite slash loop. Alright, so that's pretty much the stun burst playstyle. The next one I want to talk about is actually really interesting, and it's the fact that you do 40% extra damage whilst the enemy is under attribute anomaly. And so what I actually did was I ran Harumasa, Lighter, Bernice. And this actually works so spectacularly, right? Because I rely on Bernice and Lighter for the burn. Bernice gives extra off-field damage, and because the enemy is burning, Harumasa gets an extra 40% damage when he's on the field. But on top of that, when we get to the stun, we still have the extra 40% damage. Lighter plus 3 seconds to the stun gauge. Oh my god, it's actually a dream. And if you do have these characters, I would encourage you to give it a shot. I would recommend it. I do think that it is just as competitive, but it's also just like such an interesting comp. And another interesting team comp that kind of capitalizes on the attribute anomaly is Harumasa, Collider, Grace. And the idea here is the same, right? Except instead of Lighter and Bernice contributing burn, we now have Grace, who is on element with Harumasa. And so for Grace, I actually equip the 4-piece set Freedom Blues, which means that we get faster shocks. And so on one hand, Grace is just focused on getting shocks, so we get the plus 40% damage. And then we've got Collider trying to push the enemy into the stun. And so this gives us higher uptime on the plus 40% damage, right? And then when we hit the stun or the shock, then we blow Harumasa's load. It's actually such a freaking interesting way to play. Now, this Collider, Harumasa, Grace, I wouldn't say that this team is as good as the other, but it's not a fair comparison because it's full limited versus standard banner team. Alright, let's talk about stat priorities. And this is probably the first time I've disagreed with miHoYo's recommendation because they're highlighting in orange only crit rate and crit damage, right? However, attack is also really necessary. And there is a reason why in most games, attack, crit rate, and crit damage is the holy trinity for direct damage, right? There is an optimal point, because if you don't have enough crit rate, then you're never going to crit. And if you don't have enough crit damage, then your crits are going to suck. But then we've got attack. And the best way to illustrate this is 1 times 2 is only 2. The thing that you're multiplying also needs to be a big number for it to be an even bigger number. There is absolutely a balance. There's a reason why crit damage, crit rate, 1-to-2 ratio, and then also getting an appropriate level of attack, there's a reason why it works. That out of the way, gearing for Harumasa is actually pretty straightforward. So I personally prefer the Woodpecker Electro 4-piece set, which gives a bunch of crit rate and attack. However, remember Woodpecker Electro, this guy you need to do the basic attacks, you need to do the dodge counters and the EX specials, and you can get up to 27% attack. Now, where it is a little bit weak is when enemies are stunned, you're not going to be getting the dodge counter stack. So that means that on average, you're probably going to be at about 18%, maybe 21% attack. And as for the 2-piece set, pretty straightforward as well. We're looking at Thunder Metal. I'm using this one electric damage plus 10%, but to be honest, any kind of like 2-piece offensive set would work. So Branch and Blade Song, this guy gives crit damage plus 16%. We've also got the Puffer Electro, we've got pen ratio from that one, and we've got Hormone Punk, which gives attack. Any of these are fine. It's really going to be up to the substats. We're looking for crit rate, crit damage, and attack. And as for discs 4, 5, and 6, I've personally got crit rate here. However, the only reason I've got crit rate is because I'm not running a crit rate W engine. If you're running a crit rate W engine, like this guy over here, Cannon Rotor, I would highly suggest a crit damage slot 4. It's just back to the holy trinity, kind of like the 1-to-2 crit damage to crit ratio thing. And whilst we're here, we need to remember to not overstack, because if I come back over to the skills, you'll remember that he actually gets plus 22.6, but actually plus 25% crit rate at max to his dash attacks. So what this means is that you should pretty much never exceed 75% crit rate on his stat page here. But back over to the disc 4, 5, 6. So again, crit rate or crit damage here. For disc 5, electric damage bonus, pen ratio, attack percentage, whichever has the best substats. And then with disc 6, we're looking at, it's pretty much only attack. Now, before I move on, there is actually a case to running Thunder Metal, the electric set, 4-piece set, which essentially gives us plus 28% attack whilst the enemy is shocked. And the case in which you run a 4-piece Thunder Metal set is if you are using Grace or Qingyi or Rina. Essentially, if you have a support or if you have a stunner and these guys are helping you get shock, then absolutely Thunder Metal is completely viable. And in terms of W engines, very straightforward. If you think like Ellen, if you think like Juyuan, we're just looking for crit rate, crit damage, or attack. So that's going to be either Steel Cushion, which is just going to be a massive stat stick. We've got Brimstone as well, and because it gives attack, I would recommend crit rate disc 4. You can absolutely run each of the signatures as well as his own, which is really freaking nice. Crit damage, I believe it goes up to like 64%. But then we've got our free-to-play options, in which we've got like Starlight Engine, rah. To be honest, I prefer the crit rate, crit damage stuff. So I would say either go for the new W engine, which is going to give crit rate over here, or it's time to pull out your wallet for the Cannon Rotor. This is the BP Attack W engine. So yeah, personally, from a free-to-play point of view, I would say Mikado Desire is probably my first preference, especially because its effect is really freaking nice. All right, and then we've got Mindscapes. Now, I'm not going to go through each one because pretty much all of them do damage. Nothing really changes your playstyle too much. And as long as you've kind of like followed the principles in terms of you want to be slash attacking as much as you can, you're going to be completely fine, right? So what I'm going to instead talk about is, well, is it worth pulling for these Mindscapes? And as always, if you're a low spender or free to play, no freaking way. However, even if you did have money to throw, I would say that the meta is just not in Harumasa's favor right now, or any of the S rank attackers, right? Like Zuyuan, like Ellen. But one day, I do believe that when stronger supports come out, supports that are kind of more tailored for these kinds of units, like crit rate supports, crit damage supports, stuff like that, maybe we'll see units like Harumasa actually increase in value. Maybe they'll be better than our super anomaly dominated meta. All right, and so in that case, I think that's actually going to bring us to the end of this Harumasa guide. Hopefully that was helpful, and if there was anything I missed, do let us know down in the comments below. I would also appreciate it if you shared this video around. But otherwise, this is the end, so thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.